we have an online question and answer session with two master gardeners on the county library website. So if you go to the library website and look on events, and there's a calendar there, you can put in the date. So last Saturday, we had our plant clinic. So this coming Saturday, we won't. The following Saturday, the 26th, is our next one. So you can log on to the website, the library website, and ask your questions directly to a master gardener. And that will go on until the libraries are opening to in-person events, which will probably be not until the fall. Anyway, so that's that program.
Well, thank you, Taffy. You're awesome at putting that together. And thank you for all you do for our Master Gardener group. So we wanted to talk just a little bit about where we are with cicadas. And I noticed yesterday that there were very few on the ground and few flying, and the ones on the ground were crawling very slowly. And this morning I walked out and there is no sound of cicadas at all. So what's happening at your locations? Willie, you're on mute.
Yeah, so the same here. So as you know, the boys are the ones that make the noise. So that means that they're at the end of the cycle. I have nothing in the morning, nothing when it heats up. So it's about that time. I thought it was going to last longer though. By July 4th, they were advertising. I think that's going to taper off. June 15, pretty much done. Yeah. At least in Montgomery County. Yeah.
Kathy, what did you find at Brookside Gardens?
I was working at Brookside Gardens this morning, and we found many dead ones and a few very slow-moving females. So we figured that they were all on their way out. I'm sorry to see them go. It's been a fun ride. Oh, yeah. I think they're fabulous. They're such cute little critters.
Well, they are cute, but they're cute in somebody else's yard. All right. Well, let's get going. Since our last program, we received the following questions. And the first one is, over the last two springs, 20 and 21, I had an invasion of lesser celandine in my backyard. The first year, about 75% of my lawn, and this year, about 50% of the lawn was affected. I treated it with herbicide, the only thing that will kill it. It kills anything green, and both springs I had to replant the lawn in order to prevent excessive weed growth. I've done this essentially by myself and do not want to repeat this effort every year. I've had a few spots of lesser celandine this year in the front yard, but those seem to be manageable, and I dug it up and replanted some grass seed. I'm well aware of the tubers underneath the ground and the flowers, both of which can trigger new growth. I expect I'll see some lesser celandine next spring, but I'm hoping it will be less. I have worked at decreasing some of the backyard lawn, especially the back 9 to 10 feet, as it's very shady. And I'm also trying to add some shade-loving natives to that area. I am looking for ideas to help at least control the problem. Willie, can you take that?
Yeah, I'll be glad to. Thank you. Thanks for your question. And thank you for the picture. I'm looking at it. And, this one always made me feel like I was looking at a clover leaf because of the pattern in which he had. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That Ficaria, first of all, is a perennial. And you may think about it as this way. You may have to be on top of it with some sort of pesticide because this is a herbaceous plant, and that is flowering. It flowers growing many warm soil locations. And I believe it's an invasive weed. So let's call it what it is. Even though it has a pretty little bloom yellow flower, it is invasive and it is a weed. So as many weeds, you're going to be on top of it. If you're on top of it, it's difficult because it's just so thick, so wide, and takes a lot of real estate. and just by manhandling or grabbing it by the hand may not be enough. So I say you go into the thought of doing it with the appropriate pesticide, and you liberate yourself from the manual labor. Because I think that's what you're asking. I don't want to be doing this all the time. What am I going to do? For that, most flowering occurs in the region early March through May, so herbicides, you may have to do this multiple time applications of herbicide over a number of months, and consider this number of years may be required to exhaust the whole entire energy of that input. Keep that in mind as some good advice from our webmasters.
Thank you, Roy. I'll tell you, I've seen a lot of it out. So it's really getting to be a problem in our area. So thanks so much for the question. And that was from Sue. So thanks, Sue. All right. Our next question is something ate the tops of some of our green beans. We have a mesh fence to keep out rabbits and deer. What's eating the beans and what can we do about it? So let's rule out the things that it isn't. It's not moles. Moles don't eat plants. They eat grubs and caterpillars and all kinds of things under the ground. And you would see them because they make little tunnels in the top of the soil. Chipmunks, mice, and voles. So they're known to eat the leaves of young garden plants, especially vegetables. Most likely squirrels are climbing the fence and getting into the garden. You can try many methods. The first is make sure that the holes in your mesh fence are not big enough for any of the animals to get through, and that they're connected way down into the soil so they can't get through that way. And you could try putting a topping over your fencing. Mice, voles, and chipmunks can be reduced with repeated snap traps baited with peanut butter. And those are the two things that I would do. I've heard of people putting down cayenne pepper because they don't like the taste. In fact, I use bird seed that's covered by cayenne pepper. So when the seeds fall to the ground, the squirrels don't come for it. And that's been a big problem for me, and now it's not a problem anymore. So thank you so much for that, Sue. I appreciate your question. Our next question is from Pat. And this is, how important is it to use potting soil and peat moss when planting tomatoes and peppers? Can topsoil mixed with compost work as well? And also, the best way to water and frequency for vegetables would be interesting and important for me. Taffy, you're on mute. You're on mute, Taffy.
So whatever you're growing, whether it's vegetables or ornamentals or shrubs or annuals, whenever you put plants in pots, you do not use garden soil, regardless of what you mix it with. You always get soil from the garden center that says specifically for potting. And for vegetables or anything else, straight potting soil is just fine. You can certainly add compost. I wouldn't add peat moss. I would add compost or leaf grow or some other organic matter, but straight potting soil is just fine. That's what it's manufactured for. Vegetables in particular are heavy feeders, so I would water them with a water-soluble fertilizer specifically for vegetables. Now that can be found at garden centers. Always read the labels and follow the directions specifically for your type of vegetable, because each one is a little different.
Great. Thank you so much. The next question is submitted by Tom, and he asks, I've read that white oak is one of the best trees for wildlife. I am planning on putting in a large shade tree and have access to seedlings of white and northern red oak. But I have concerns because of the recent dieback of oaks in the area. Will these trees be susceptible to dieback in the next several years, or is it only happening to mature trees? Should I plant a different kind of oak or even a different species of shade tree? My area is a large open expanse of lawn, full sun, with clay-like soil in the top few inches and more sandy soil below. The lawn area does stay wet for a bit after a big rain. So you know that the white oak is Maryland's state tree, and it's an important tree in our environment. But most of the white oaks are suffering dieback and leaves falling, and I've lost 2 of them, and many other people that I know have lost theirs as well. And we think that it's because of the warmer temperatures, and some would say that's a result of global warming, but I would stay away from those oaks. I would think about a different tree like you're asking about. And I have 3 suggestions. Eastern redbud is a great tree for the area. It's got beautiful pink or purple flowers in the fall, in the early spring before the leaves come out, and they're really nicely shaped. Sourwood is another great option. And my favorite is a black gum. I have a black gum that's about 22 years old. It's huge. It's a great tree in the fall. It's got beautiful leaves, orange, red, and yellow. And it's great, has a good bark interest during the winter time. And I see lots of birds and lots of squirrels and all kinds of animals near my black gum. So that's what I'm suggesting. And thank you so much for the question. It's really important. A lot of people are talking about those white oaks right now. So thanks. Our next question is from Katie. And she asks, the leaves of this Louisiana iris are looking sickly. The plant is flowering okay, but the foliage looks bad. These irises stay green in the winter, so I never really fully cut them back. Only remove the occasional leaves that completely turn brown and dry up at the base. Should I prune back all of the foliage at some part of the year? Is it an insect or a disease? Do they need to be divided? Possibly stressed because they don't get a lot of water? So Willie, would you take this question? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm looking at the picture. It's quite amazing. Rust. It looks like those leaves are having that particular disease. So, but in general, diseases are negligible of importance, except for rust, which can seriously damage the foliage. And so some species and their the hydrates under favorable weather conditions in the spring can get that rust fungus disease, which can be controlled by systematically spraying the foliage with some sort of appropriately sustainable fungicide that then can in regular intervals, of course, during the late winter to then the spring. But it's doubtful that the juice is worth the squeeze per se. Some people say, because iris by itself, Iris fovea, and the Iris foliacea or foliosa are the most susceptible of those species. So it can carry a high degree of natural resistance. However, you come up with some problems, mostly due when you put them all together. So you may have to somehow divide them in planting normally due to planting in excessive shade, using too much fertilizer, too deep, they're too crowded from each other. So yeah, think about that when they start. And I saw that you had them all wrapped up in a bunch, and there's a lot of them all together in one place. Think about separating them. Some soft rock causes some sort of fungicide, rhizomes, to become mushy and have they start smelling, just a not agreeable odor of some sort. So remove the yellow leaves promptly, of course, that will help. And then that will limit the spread of that disease. Remember, it's a fungus, so, don't drop it anywhere. Just put it in a bag and take it away from the area in the soil. There's so many types of iris. I think the last I counted, there were over 11 types of iris, and they all need to be thought about carefully so as to avoid that fungus coming back to them. So keep that in mind when you clean out the leaves, or use the appropriate fungicide to get rid of the fungus, and about separating them, giving them more room to breathe and not spread the fungus. Okay? Thank you for the question.
Thanks. The flowers sure are pretty, though.
Yeah, they sure are.
Okay. So our next question was submitted by Amy, and she says, this old silver maple has grown into the fence. Not my tree, not my fence. There are several dead branches on this tree, which I'm concerned could come down and crush plants on my side of the fence. I think it's a really good picture, and what a big, healthy tree that is. This tree is in the low spot where 5 yards come together, and it probably soaks up a lot of water. We get flowing water and temporarily saturated soil nearby with a heavy rain. I'm also doing shade gardening on my side of the fence. I know silver maples can drop large branches, so I'm unsure if this is just a natural dieback or if the fence is rapidly killing the tree. If I ask my neighbor to take down the tree, the water problem will be worse, and I have problems with too much light for some of my plants. On the other hand, if I plant a new tree now to take the spot of the maple where it eventually dies, I fear a big branch could come down and damage the new tree. Plus, how to establish a tree that can live in wet conditions, but has to initially compete with the roots of a mature silver maple. Should I just cut the dead branches? What is the best course of action here, and how long will the tree be able to live with the fence in its bark? Well, okay, so first of all, the fence may bend and move, the tree may bend and move the fence. And the second thing is the dead branches falling are common with this tree. But there's rules in Montgomery County. You just can't cut from a tree that's in a neighbor's yard or belongs to them. So I have a name of this great woman. Her name is Laura Miller. Her email address is laura.miller@montgomerycountymd.gov. She's a longtime forest conservation coordinator for Montgomery County with the Department of Environmental Protection. And she serves as a liaison between the public, the county, and the trees. So I would email her and ask her your questions. We don't get into those and things like that. So that's your best bet. And thank you for the question. It happens all over. Taffy?
No, that's
Okay.
good. Good advice.
Okay, all right. Our next question is from Mary Silver Spring, and she asks, do these photos show clematis wilt, or is it something else? If wilt, do I cut the stems that have turned a dark color just below the dark areas? Help. Taffy?
Okay, yeah, clematis wilt is a very common problem with clematis. So it's a fungus, and there's really not much you can do to prevent it except to make sure that the clematis is being grown in conditions that are favorable, which is they like their roots cool and their foliage in the sun. So they, like I have many clematis in pots. They do well in pots. They do well in the soil, but once they're established, don't move them because they don't like to be moved. But once you have clematis wilt, you have it, and there's nothing to prevent it. The fungal spores are everywhere. You cut back the part of the plant that's affected an inch below the affected area. Sometimes you have to cut it all the way to the ground. if the entire plant is affected, you cut the entire plant down. Often, if it hasn't gone into the root system, the plant will regenerate and it'll be fine. Often it won't, and you will lose your plant, and that will be an opportunity to get another plant. So that's clematis wilt. It's just one of the things that when you plant clematis, you think, one of the things I have to pay attention to is clematis wilt, because it will always happen. Well, it is highly likely to happen whenever you are growing clematis.
Thank you so much, and thanks for the question. Our next question is submitted by Sean, and she asks, how do I deadhead catnip plant Nepeta to encourage new blooms? The picture is the first flush of blooms that's about to fade. Willie?
Catnip Nepeta. All right. So most varieties of catnip can be deadhead by pruning a clump of catnip flower. And so, and probably the ones that are fading and that have turned brown, likely is the one that you need to start with from the beginning, right? So, and then cut them back next to the branch, and probably 2 to 3 weeks of catnip will bloom again, right? So you do not have to deadhead every flower to have a rebloom, okay? Keep that in mind. Probably about one third is enough, and it will keep the plant more, tinier, compact. Also, deadheading should be done before the plant sets for seed. So that's the best advice we can give you at the moment. So, thank you for your question. I like the picture though.
Thank you. It's hard to make the difference between catnip and catmint.
That's right. Yeah.
All the time. Our next question is, this is an African violet that I saved from the distress rack at Lowe's. I'm not sure how to encourage it to bloom. This is the brightest light it will get. I don't have any sunny windows in the house, and I'm wondering if it's not enough light, or if it is there something else I should do to help it? Well, first of all, that's a great way to get plants. The stores, these big box stores, are really trying to get rid of their plants if they don't look so good because they feel like they can't sell them. And they're actually in pretty good shape other than the way they look, and maybe they got damaged or something. So congratulations. It's a great thing that you did. So if you want to produce constant blooms, you apply fertilizer on a monthly basis using a specific compound formulated for them. They have little containers of African violet food, all kinds of things at the nurseries. Phosphorus levels need to be high in order to get those beautiful blooms. So use something like a 12-36-14 fertilizer. Violets need strong, bright light. At least 6 hours is ideal, but not direct sun. And the lack of light curtails blooming and causes leaves to grow upright. Northern exposures are better during the hot summer months, and the optimum temperature for African violets is between 65 and 75 degrees. African violets prefer soils that are evenly moist. So if you water improperly, especially overwatering, it's a primary cause of problems. Allow the soil to dry out only slightly before watering, and then water from below. I grow African violets, and what I do is, and you should repot that plant, and I put a piece of yarn or string, a heavy string, inside the pot with the soil. And then I put it in a container like you see in the photo, and I put the water there and allow the African violet to suck it up. And after an hour, you take the container away, obviously, or get rid of the water. But that's worked for me, and I've had some of my plants for 4 or 5 years. So I think you can do the same. And if the water remains at the bottom after an hour, get rid of it. And I think that really, you'll be fine if you get it the proper sun, the proper nutrition, and the proper water, and make sure that you don't overwater. So thanks for the question. It was great. All right. And our last question that was submitted to us is from Susan in Potomac. And she asks, hi, this shrub has grown so big in 30 plus years. It's provided us with privacy and a nice woodsy feel. However, it drops a large amount of leaves in all seasons, but keeps growing new leaves. Some areas are healthy, but about 50% have spots. Can you name this shrub? Can anything be done to get it healthy? Why does it drop so many leaves? And what would be the suggestion going forward, if any, to keep the shrub, now a tree? Should we just cut it down? Do you have a referral for someone to help in person? No, we don't do referrals. It does provide a barrier on our deck, as I mentioned, but the sick-looking leaves are not making me happy. Please help. Taffy, will you take this one?
Okay. So this is a Photonia, let's see, it's a Photinia. And it's evergreen. It's a nice plant. It can get really big. But it's kind of difficult to tell from your pictures exactly the environment it's in. But the one picture of the big dead branches, that looks like a lot of it is dead. And from what I can see of your pictures, I would remove it. There's an awful lot of dead wood, and that part of the tree is dead. Photinias are especially prone to getting a fungal leaf spot, which is what you see. It's caused by fungus, and fungus exists, and many things get fungal leaf spots, and some are more prone to it than others, and Photinia is noted for its leaf spot. So for your question, to cut it down, I would say yes. And I have several suggestions for you. From what I can tell from your pictures, it's a fairly shady, wooded spot. And you want something for screening. I see you have privacy. So I'm looking at evergreen possibilities that tolerate shade. So this is always a conundrum, shade-tolerant evergreen trees. A good example is Aucuba. That's Aucuba. That is an evergreen that is very tolerant of shade. It has a lot of them have blotchy leaves that look interesting, although you can get all green cultivars. There are big ones and small ones. A favorite of mine is Leucothoe, Loecothoe. That is a native plant. The species gets fairly big, maybe 4 or 5 feet, but there are some that are dwarf that stay smaller. It's evergreen. It has some interesting little flowers in the spring. Azaleas are always a nice alternative. I love azaleas. Some people think they're overused, but I think that that's a dichotomy of terms. You can't overuse azaleas. And there are so many varieties that bloom early and late, tall, small. There are native ones that are deciduous. You might put a combination of evergreen and deciduous azaleas. Ilex holly is another one that tolerates a good bit of shade. There's same thing, hollies that get huge and hollies, dwarf varieties that stay small. There's our native holly, Ilex opaca. The species is very big, but there are many dwarf varieties that come in small, 3-4 feet, 6 feet. There is Ilex crenata, which is an Asian holly that comes, the variety Sky Pencil is very nice. It's a very tall, thin one. And if you have the area to put them like 3 in a grouping, would be very nice. And I don't know, that's about it. But I'm sorry for your Photinia, but they're problematic shrubs. So maybe you look at this as an opportunity to get something new.
Thank you, Taffy. That was great. So do we have any questions that were sent into the comments?
Today.
Okay. Well, please contact us if you have any gardening questions or questions regarding any of the programs. You can also view previously answered questions from In the Garden on YouTube. To submit a question, go to our link, which should be on the screen. Please enter as much detail as possible, and photos are welcome and really important for us to make a diagnosis. Cutoff for inclusion in the next session of In the Garden is this Friday, June 18th at 6 p.m. to be answered on Tuesday, the 28th of June. Include your email in case we need to follow up, and we'll make every effort to answer your questions on air. But if we run out of time on our show, we will provide you with an answer by email. Thank you so much, Taffy and Willie, for being our experts today. And our researchers, Mary, Susan, Sean, Pamela, Judy, Mary Lou, Ilse, Paula, and Colleen. Most of these researchers are from our most recent Master Gardener class, and they're doing a great job. Thank you all for joining us. Our next In the Garden program will be June the 28th. Remember, if you have questions, please contact us at the link on the screen. We hope to see you again. Bye.